bem? Sejam muito bem-vindos ao Cultura de Excelência. Eu sou a Karen Ross e é um prazer receber vocês aqui. Aqui na Voito teremos encontros semanais onde vamos conversar com mulheres de todo o mundo sobre propósito, melhoria de processos e gentileza. Hi, everyone. How are you? I'm Karen Ross, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here today. Here at Voito, we're having weekly meetings where we're talking with women from around the world about purpose, process improvement, and kindness. And before I introduce our topic and our fabulous guest today, I just want to remind everyone that on the screen, you'll see right here our QR code. And please take a moment and use the QR code to download our handbook for this whole series. Inside, you're going to find super information, links. You're going to find all of the insights from all of the episodes. So please, please, please take a moment and download our handbook. Today, it's going to be a super exciting episode with a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. And we're going to be talking about how to implement lean in creative work. And I'm absolutely super excited to introduce you all to my fabulous creative lean friend, Stephanie Hill. So Stephanie Hill, welcome to Cultura de Excelencia.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me here today.
You're welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and all about the kind of work you do?
Sure. So I'm coming to everyone from my home here in Des Moines, Iowa, in the United States. I am the owner of Lightbulb Moment Consulting, where I'm helping small businesses and nonprofits to do more with less. I also am the process analyst for Barry Appelman and Leiden. That's an immigration law firm out of Dallas, Texas. And I've been in continuous improvement for more than 20 years. I've worked in a whole variety of industries. I've also worked as a chemist and a recruiter. And in terms of certifications in that, I do have my Master Black Belt certification in Lean Six Sigma, as well as one in strategic human resources leadership and in Agile. And I also want to tell you that my mission is really to enable people's natural tendency to see and solve problems in order to leave the world better than we found it.
I love that. It's super kind. And, I like to do a lot of creative stuff. People, may or may not know that I have a master's degree in sculpture, and you can see, some of my sewing, and I like to draw, and of course I like to write. And so I was so happy when we met each other because you're like into creativity just as much as I am. And sometimes I think people think, oh, well, lean and creativity don't go together. And like people who are artists, like lean is for people who are engineers. It's not really for people who are artists. So I'm really looking forward to our talk today. So we have a question to get us started. And it's one that people ask me all the time. So I'm super interested to hear your take on this. Many people believe that standardizing work kills creativity and that standard work and creativity cannot go together. Do you think that's true?
I don't think that's true. and I just think it's funny that you, I guess when you started talking with me, you viewed me as a creative person, because I think even the term creativity is something that has evolved, from my interpretation of it. When I met you, of course, I thought there's a creative woman, because like you said, sculpting, sewing, I can't remember what else you do, drawing, probably an infinite number of creative things. I think you even have a creativity day each week, don't you, on Saturday maybe? Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. So you are the queen of creativity in my mind. But then over time, I started, coming to the definition for myself that it's really an expression of ourselves as individuals. So that can take a lot of different forms. And that, for me, like, I love to dance. That's something that's creative and expressive for me. My partner does body piercing, and he does that for a profession, but also a creative expression. And then I was even thinking, like in the work world, every time that we have we look at something and we think about how we're going to solve that problem in an innovative way. We're using our creativity every day. And so it's not just you or me who's creative. I would say it's the entire audience listening to this would be considered creative from my standpoint. So yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. And actually, it makes me so sad when, I go and I speak to people and I'm talking about creativity in the keynote, and I'll ask people, oh, if you raise your hand if you think you're creative. And people don't do that because they have that idea that creativity, okay, you have to have a master's degree in sculpture, or you have to draw, or you have to paint. But engineers are solving problems every single day. It's that
Right.
solving the problem and making something new and better.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't do that if we didn't have creativity.
Right, exactly. And then the other side of that is the standardizing, right? So if we look at standardizing and whether or not that kills creativity, I definitely think the opposite is true, because when we're working in a creative field and whatever we're doing, there are always going to be certain tasks that are going to feel redundant, or we're going to have to do them maybe once a day, once a month, whatever the case is. And if we're doing those things inefficiently, then it really bogs down the work that we want to do creatively. So if we can standardize that kind of work and do that as efficiently as possible, that frees us up both from a time and an energy standpoint to focus on the things we love. So the things that add tremendous value to the world, both for ourselves, for our work, whatever the case is, in that creative aspect. So I definitely think the opposite would be true.
I agree with you 100%. And I think, as you were saying, it gave me, I really thought of something that's a really simple example. So I love to sew.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one of the things that I made that I'm wearing. And my machine has so many different settings, and different material requires different stitch length and stitch tension. So I actually have a little piece of paper that says, if I'm sewing this kind of material, use this stitch length and this setting, because otherwise the material gets all balled up. If I didn't have those standards, it would actually be a lot more difficult, and I don't have to think very much. I just look at the little piece of paper that I have, and I set the machine settings. So it's a thicker piece of canvas. Let me put the machine setting on this. So it helps me to free up time for, like, oh, how do you do this design? What colors do I put together? So I think that I agree with you 100%. It really, really goes together, because it frees up your mind to do the fun, creative part.
Yeah, and in some cases, that confusion, or getting kind of mixed up with the type of stitch that you would use or all that, like that would probably deter someone like me completely from doing it in the first place. But if I had standard work that told me what to do, it would probably draw me to it more than anything else. So yeah, I like that example a lot.
Yeah, I agree. It makes it totally easy, right? So it's very common for us to only think about lean as a methodology for industrial production and manufacturing. What are the advantages that we have, in really using it in more creative work? How about body piercing, for example, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I think, so first of all, only 50% of my time in lean, so like 10 years, were spent in companies that do manufacturing. So the other part of it had been spent in insurance, healthcare, retail, nonprofit. So it's definitely expanded, well beyond the manufacturing world. And I do have a few examples, or a couple examples that come to mind. So yeah, you mentioned body piercing. I have been helping my partner Rob for 10 years now with his studio. So his studio is Prism Jewelry and Piercing. And with us, first of all, becoming clear on what his clients desire and need, and then aligning his studio, both kind of the layout and the workflow, in order to most efficiently and effectively meet those needs. He's grown his revenue significantly year over year since we started doing that. He just in July opened the new high-end studio, and he's been bringing in like 4 times the revenue of his prior studio. And he gives tours frequently to people, whether they're clients or just visiting. And when he does that, he attributes lean to the way that the studio is set up and how he works. And so I love that so much.
I love that too. And, people can see me here. I'm sitting in my studio as well. And I would say I feel exactly the same. I have one desk that I sit in, that I do my writing and then I do my work, but I can easily turn and get to my sewing. I have all of my art supplies organized in a certain way. So if I want to pull those things, the thing is, it's not something that's just for industrial things. It's for use in everyday creative life. So
yeah, and sorry, I just had one more example, because earlier I talked about more of the work world and the innovation that's there. And so when I was at the insurance company, we had a sales staff where we were doing a lean event with them. And I think of sales as more of like a creative field, because they constantly have to really hear their customers and then come up with a catered solution that's going to meet what they need. And so when we did this event, Karen, can you guess how much time the salespeople were actually selling?
maybe like 1% of the time.
Better. It was like 15% of the time. But the rest of the time they were doing administrative work. So that redundant work and, things of that nature. And so through the lean event that we did, we were able to streamline the work and kind of allocate the work more effectively. And so we've really helped them with their generating revenue, which is what salespeople are supposed to be doing. So that was a way that we kind of applied it in more of a business sense. But yeah.
And I bet actually it made them a lot happier to do their job too, because people want to do, that thing that gives them joy. That's actually the creative thing, right? They wanted to sell. I'm sure they didn't want to be spending all of their time doing that administrative work.
Correct. Yep, exactly.
Totally cool. How do you think that it's possible to implement lean so that people who actually work in art and creativity can reduce waste and better develop standard work? And I'm going to say this ties back to what I think is, some wrong thinking about creative people, that we're all just, sort of up in the air and in the clouds, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, going back to the piercing studio, we did, kind of all the tools you could probably think of, but we were using spaghetti diagrams. We did time studies. We set up Kanban cards for inventory. It's funny because when he moved from his prior location, they were a little late with setting up the Kanban cards, and he was completely confused and lost because he needed his cards back in place. And we did process maps as well. And so, doing all these activities together, we were able to reduce the wait times for their clients. And I know I'm not going to bring up too much, but I know you've had a dental experience in a dental office where you had a similar outcome with the wait times. We also increased the number of clients that the piercers could see. And so they had the opportunity to spend more time with them on the design and consulting side of it, which again is what they love, and less time with kind of the waiting and the doing the administrative stuff. So that was kind of cool. And then my friend, Amy, so she is a true artist. She's a painter, and she's taught several classes that I've attended. And so her standardization is that she has a set way that she sends out the invitations and then sends out the reminders. And when you go into the studio, she has each work area set up in a very standard way for all the materials to be laid out, and the snacks and all that. And then she also has the 3 hours or so that we're going to spend together perfectly timed out so that she knows when the paint's going to be drying and we all can get up and socialize and, those kinds of things. And recently I went to an event where she wanted it to just be carefree, you know, like everybody can kind of do what they wanted. And I hated it. Like I just hated it because I felt anxious. I didn't know where any of the supplies were. And so I was wandering around the room, like trying to figure out what I was going to need. And I lacked confidence, I would say. And I wasted an hour just kind of getting up the nerve and the materials and all that stuff to just start painting. And so it's funny because and kind of like I talked about with the sewing machine, it can also deter you when you don't have things standardized. So yeah, that was a definite application.
I would agree. And I think the thing is that if we really decide, okay, all people are creative people, because as human beings we're all working on solving problems, we all want to express the and do the things that we love to do, that this really changes the discussion about this, because we're like, well, since we're all creative people, we can actually all use these methodologies too, and we shouldn't have sort of that stereotype that creative people can't follow a standard, or that it doesn't work together.
Right.
Really does.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
When I first worked at the payroll company, they were when I first started learning lean, they were just like, okay, what's an artist doing in the math world? But I had so many ideas for different ways that we could, serve our customers, and different ways to remove waste and things.
Right.
And they actually went out to look for people with art backgrounds.
Oh, great.
Right? So it really does work very well together.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of a change in question. How do you think that we can develop empathy in teams to help us better understand customer needs, and then use our creativity to deliver more value to them?
Yeah, so I think so you said value for sure. So lean is really a discipline or that really relies on understanding value. And so value is really defined from the customer standpoint. So if we talk about really understanding what they need and they want, it requires us to do more than just gathering a set of facts, right? So it really requires us to seek out and listen to the customer's feelings about, first of all, the problem that they're experiencing today, and then about any perceived solution that you might have. How does that impact them? How does that make them feel? And only through really relating to a person's feelings is one able to offer a solution that aligns with how they want to feel. So I think empathy goes very hand in hand with that concept of being able to deliver value.
I totally agree with you. And actually, it just made me think while you were saying that. I have two daughters, and both of them wanted to get their nose pierced. And so one daughter, like, is very brave. Those kind of things don't bother her. The other daughter is very nervous about them. But they went together, and I went with them. And one of the things that I thought was so wonderful at the piercing studio that we went to, they understood how to kindly take care of both customers, right? So they have these two girls, and how do you help the one who's like super nervous, and how do you give them a value added experience, right? And then how do you help the one who, okay, that kind of thing doesn't bother her? And they had a super good process. And the one nervous daughter, she's gone on to get other piercings and other tattoos. So they really did a great job.
Yeah, it's funny because so we go every year to the Association of Professional Piercing Conference in Las Vegas, and actually they have they have one in Germany and Mexico too. So it's an international association, and they talk every year they've got talks about energy. And so they, when somebody goes in for a piercing, especially, there's like the high energy people or the low energy people. And they teach the piercers how to bring them kind of to center before they start the piercing process. So that makes total sense if they were, able to work on both levels of that. And I think that's cool. And I think more business businesses have that opportunity to view their own clients in the same way. Because if I'm going to go purchase a brand new phone, I have the similar kind of a reaction to that. Like I go in either really excited or skeptical or something, and I would really like someone to work with me to like get that sense of where I'm coming from and kind of neutralize it before before I make that purchase decision. So makes
Yes.
sense.
And I think that really falls under our respect for people part of Lean as well, right? Not just voice of customer, but every single one of our customers is a unique and valued and valuable human being. And how do we have the kindness and empathy to help them with whether we're a service, whether we're production, right? How do we really help them?
Right. Yeah, completely.
That goes with your purpose and it goes with my purpose, right?
Right.
All right, well, now we've reached the part of the show which I really love the most, which is where we take questions from Voito students, because, of course, if you're a student, the best way to learn is by asking a question. So here's the first question we have. What techniques can any company use to encourage creative thinking in teams?
Okay, so I think the first thing is just to focus on fun and laughter. I find that laughter is the greatest way to build camaraderie and to remove inhibitions. And so it's important to be able to remove inhibitions if we want people to be able to fully present themselves and fully articulate who they are and express themselves. So that's really important. And more than the techniques I could give you, I think just anything that you can do that generates that is going to be great. I also think that if you are incorporating people's full body, that's another way to get them outside of their kind of usual way of thinking. And so, I've done this. This isn't appropriate probably for these times, but I've done like a handshake contest to see how many hands they could shake. Maybe now it's like elbow tap.
Yeah, elbow bumping.
Yeah, something like that. But like bingo, where you go around and try to find information about people in the room. We've also done, in teaching spaghetti diagrams, we will like lay out candy throughout the room that we've hidden, and we'll have people, try to draw what they're doing, and that gets people moving around and teaches something at the same time. Drawing is another great thing to get people thinking creatively. I've been in one workshop where we paired up, and like one person would draw whatever the other person would say, and then they did the introduction of the person by interpreting the drawings. We've done telestrations where we alternate phrases and drawings. That also gets people laughing. It's quite funny. And I think that, and just like even having, maybe covering the tables with butcher paper or some kind of paper and leaving out crayons and markers. And even if it's not formal, you're getting their brains engaged as they're just kind of casually doodling while you're talking. Well, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, when we started Women in Lean Our Table, the first meeting that we had, actually, we did exactly that. We just had paper on the tables and people drew, right? They didn't write out the things, they drew, and it really helped us to come together and broke down all kinds, we didn't all know each other, break down all kinds of barriers and come up with really creative solutions that have led now 2 years later to almost 900 women coming together.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's great. And I think the biggest thing, so you could do all kinds of activities in that, but I think one of the biggest things is to also get leadership engaged and having fun. So if people are watching their leadership having fun and encouraging activities in space for building relationships and getting out of the typical workspace that they're in order to let ideas flow, and not always adding so much pressure of like getting to the real work, which is not always the real work, because that creative space is where humans add the value that the machines can't. So getting leadership to really understand that and role model that, so that people feel okay having fun in the workplace. That's important.
I love that. And so many great and useful ideas for people to try. What tips would you give anyone who works creatively to enjoy the benefits of lean thinking? How could they get started if they haven't thought, oh, this is something that goes with me. I'm not an engineer, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if you're creative, you're probably already on your way to wanting to work with me. So probably not tons of tips. I would just say think through anything that irritates you, that bugs you, that prevents you from getting to the work that you find joy in. So anything that you love, if there's something that's getting in the way, think about that and look at that as a potential candidate for applying lean, right? So it's streamlining it, getting rid of it altogether, whatever the case is. There's a good chance that you can do something to change that, because you should be able to do work that brings you joy every day. So
I'm in agreement, and I actually have a book called How to Coach for Creativity and Service Excellence, and it really talks about how to put those two together. So much of lean has visual, making things visual, that it's super easy for art people to and creative people to take up. All right, so last question. What books or materials would you recommend to help students to be more creative?
And my books kind of come from a business standpoint too, or my resources I think about. I really like Joy Inc. by Rich Sheridan. Also, he's got a great company, Menlo Industries, worth looking into. For videos or books, 2-Second Lean by Paul Akers. Also, there's videos in kind of alignment with that called Fix What Bugs You, and that's out of Fast Cap, that company. I think Elizabeth Swan might have been your guest recently, right?
Yeah.
So she's got a workshop. I think she's got a couple workshops, but how to apply improv to problem solving. I took that workshop. It was really fun, laughing the whole time. But then I think, more than any book or any website or anything like that, my recommendation is trying new things. Do something outside of your comfort zone. Take lessons in something you would never even think of, and just learn new things. Talk to people, interact with people who are very different from you, and do so with a totally open mind. Just listening to their background and what makes them them, and then exploring new places. So if you have the means to travel to another country, do that. If you don't, go out into the woods and take a walk. Just things that put you outside of your normal box that you're in all day physically. Because I think more than anything you're going to read or watch, that is going to spark more ideas and more creativity in you than anything else.
I agree. And, I think the painting session that you went to, you posted the beautiful painting, right? And so, I think the suggestions you're giving people are the best. Give it a try, right? When you start hearing that voice in your head saying, oh my goodness, I can't do it, I'm not creative, this is this, actually just say, hey, I'm a human being.
Yeah.
So guaranteed I'm creative. Give it a try. And I think that's the best resource, really.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's hard to believe we have come to the end of another fabulous episode of Cultura de Excelencia. I know, Stephanie, people are going to want to learn more from you. They're going to want to connect with you. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can email me directly at hill.lbm, so hill.lbmoment@gmail.com, or they can go to my website at lbmoment.com.
Cool. And can they find you on LinkedIn?
Oh, definitely. I'm definitely out on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, that's totally wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insights with us, and so many actually practical things for people to apply. And as we all know, I'm a big fan of practice. So everybody, I suggest that you connect with Stephanie. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, so everyone, before we end this episode, let's look at our insights. Insight number 1, standardization is aligned to creativity. They aren't opposites. If we have inefficient processes, creativity comes in to solve the problems. And the more things we can standardize, actually, the more time we have for all of those fun, creative things. Insight 2, standardization is a great ally in reducing waste. So actually, you can spend more time listening to customers, doing the work that you love, and aligning with our customer expectations. Insight number 3, empathy is a concept that goes hand in hand with value creation. When you're empathetic and put yourself in the shoes of others, you can actually take the fear out of what your customers are feeling and make them feel safer. And customers who feel safer and happy are going to stay with your organization. Insight number 4, creativity can be done and practiced in countless ways. Painting, drawing, singing, putting a puzzle together, solving a problem, doing a crossword puzzle. And don't forget to show that leadership needs to be aligned in this process. So have a fun activity where leaders and team members, maybe you can go to a painting studio and work on doing that painting together. And last insight number 5, for creative ideas, go beyond links and books. Give something new a try. This year, I actually tried gardening. I hadn't done it before. I was a little worried, but look, I grew mini pumpkins. So fun. And just that idea of giving something new a try was really, really super helpful in improving my creativity in other areas of my life. So thank you again to Stephanie for being such a great guest. And that's it for this week's episode of Cultura de Excelencia. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone next week when we are going to be talking about how to be a kind leader, promoting empathy and respect for people. And we'll be speaking with some more great women in lean. So until then, I hope you have a fabulous week filled with purpose, process improvement, and kindness. Bem, pessoal, esse foi o 10º episódio do Cultura de Excelência. Muito obrigado se juntaram a mim e a Stephanie Hill hoje. Espero ver todas vocês na semana que vem, onde vamos falar sobre sejam unida gentil, promovendo empatia e respeito pelas pessoas, com mais uma mulher incrível no Lean. Até lá, espero que você tenha uma semana fabulosa e cheia de propósitos, melhoria de processo e gentileza. Ciao, ciao, everyone.